You mentioned this tragedy. Now, some people would say, okay, John, one of my tragedies is my kid died in a car accident. How could I possibly manifest that in my life? That's something that had nothing to do with me. What do you say to people when they say this had nothing to do with me?
Well, we're making first an assumption that that's a terrible event. That's the first assumption. Maybe, could be, maybe not. I get to deal with grief and losses every single weekend in my program. I developed a methodology that I started working on it in 1976 and been using it since 85 formally. And I'm going to shock people here, so.
Yeah, you're good at that.
they may not.
You've already shocked them by saying that.
Okay, right, so listen carefully to this, because this is really, whoever's listening out there, pay close attention. I first, in 1976, I'm surfing in La Libertad, El Salvador. And I come in from riding some big waves out on the point, and I'm walking through the town, and all of a sudden I see this parade of people. And I walk up and I say, "¿Qué pasa? What's happening?" Because I didn't speak a lot of Spanish. And this guy said, "Well, we're celebrating the death of our mayor." I went, "Celebrating the death of the mayor?" "Yeah." I said, "Because everybody's in color, and there's music, and there's dancing, and it's a party." And when I think of death, I thought of gloom and doom and wearing black and quiet, and And he says, "Yeah, in our belief, his spirit is freed, and we're celebrating the freedom of his spirit. It's no longer constrained in his body." And I went, "Oh, that's an interesting Platonic idea there." So they went down and buried him, and they're celebrating and partying and stuff. And that just really did my head in back at 76. And I thought, one culture sees that as freedom, the other one sees it as gloom and doom and loss. What is it that makes people have these different beliefs and these feelings? That started me on the journey. So that led me into studying the brain and neurology of it, and what is grief and how does it work, etc., the neurochemistry of it. And then I started to do consulting with people and ask them this question. What specific trait, action, or inaction do you perceive this individual displayed or demonstrated that you admired most and now miss most in this person when they died? A child or any age, doesn't matter what the age is. Or a pet. And they go, "Well, I miss his hugs, I miss his smiles, I miss his guidance, I miss watching him play," whatever it is they list. But they never say, "I miss their farts, I miss their yelling, I miss their screaming, I miss their hitting and biting, I miss them stealing from me, I miss them getting in trouble and almost going to jail." They never write down things that they were challenged by. They only write things that supported their values, not the things that challenged their values. So I've done that, and I thought, okay, so that means that the people have both sides, but for some reason they're infatuated with a side, and the part they're infatuated with, they're now grieving the loss of. And the part they're resenting, they've unconsciously got a relief of not having to deal with that. And most people don't admit that because socially, in some cultures, you didn't love them if you talk like that. And so you have to grieve. And because animals grieve, we have to grieve. Not true. Prolonged grief syndrome causes cardiovascular, digestive systems, skin conditions, immune conditions, even cancers have been associated with it. So it's not to our advantage to sit there and do it. And if you ask 1,000 people, I've done thousands of people, if you had only 24 hours to live and you're about to die, what would you want for the people who are remaining that you love? I've not met one of them can say, look me in the eye and say, "I want them to grieve." They say, "I want them to live their life to the fullest and be inspired by their life and achieve what they want to do." That's what you want. So I thought, well, where does this idea of the grieving come from? It's an observation. So I went in there and I started to go through and I identified a number of things. I made them list everything that they're grieving the loss of. And I pointed out to them, isn't it interesting? Because they start out saying, "I miss everything about them." No. And I point out things that they didn't like. And they go, "Well, I don't miss that. I'm not grieving that." No. You have to have dopamine and oxytocin and vasopressin and enkephalons and a little bit of estrogen and serotonin in the brain that's elevated in order to have the grief process, because you have to have withdrawal symptoms from that, the loss of something that gave you that, in order to experience this called grief. It's the same as the drug withdrawals, right. Same kind of feeling. So anything that creates those compounds is going to make you get the grief process. So the more infatuated you with them, the more you end up grieving. If you resented them, you didn't grieve. When Trump knocked out Soleimani, the Iranian general, right, who was in America called the great terrorist, we were celebrating. In Iran, there were 5 million people mourning in the center of the town because he was a hero there. They infatuated with him there. They're grieving. We were celebrating because we saw him as a terrorist. We saw more negatives than positives. We were celebrating. They saw more positive negatives. They were grieving. So grief was that which they infatuated with. Now, can you confuse love with infatuation? Most people do. When you really love somebody, you embrace the pleasures and the pains, and you acknowledge both of them. When you're infatuated with them, you see only one side. When you're infatuated with them, you fear the loss of them. When you resent them, you fear the gain of them. And you're relieved of the loss. So you get grief over that part you're infatuated with. You get relief over the part you resented when they die. But this one doesn't get brought up. This one only gets brought up. And there's a multi-billion-dollar business around that one. Funerals and all kind of stuff. So what I do is I go in there and I show them that when somebody dies, other people take on the traits. And I learned that at 14 when I lived on the streets. When I hitchhiked at California when I was 14, and I made it to Huntington Beach, California, and I was about to go surfing, and this 27-year-old, beautiful, blue-eyed, blonde babe came over and looked at me, and she said, "Are you a runaway?" I looked up at her, and I was going, "Whoa." I said, "No, my parents gave me a ride to the freeway." And she said, where are you staying? And I said, "Well, I'm planning to stay on the beach." She says, "Well, you can't stay on the beach. There's a curfew here. You have to go down to the cliffs to stay here in Huntington Beach." "Well, I guess I'll go down there." She said, "Do you need a place to stay?" Now, if a 27-year-old beautiful blonde babe says you need a place to stay, I don't care what age you are. You go, sure. So I follow this girl to her place. We go to her house. She says, "Look, I'll wash your clothes. I'll cook you something. Go there and have a shower." I come back from the shower. We eat and everything else. She said, "You can sleep up here in this waterbed up in this attic." And I'm going, "Wow, this is amazing." And she's cleaning everything, and I'm like, I scored, man. 14-year-old score. And that was, in those days, free love was kind of happening in 1968. So she put the dishes together, and I went upstairs. I was about to go to sleep. All of a sudden, the lights go out, and she comes up the steps, and she comes in there, and we make love. Now, that would be illegal today. That would be terrible. You can't talk like that. But I was grateful for that, because what I discovered was she had been married and had a 4-year-old son, and the partner she had, who was 24 and a half, came from a very wealthy family, and they took the baby away from her because she didn't have enough money to be able to take care of the baby, but they did. So they grabbed the baby, and she was trying to work and make bathing suits and sell them at a boutique in order to get the money to get her baby back. So she was missing and having a void about having a child and no more husband. So when you added up the age of the husband, 24 and a half, and the age of the son, which is 4 and a quarter, added up and divide by 2, that was my age. So I was partly the son to take care of and cook and clean. I was partly the man to be able to make love with, and I saw that. And then I looked at my average mom's age and my average girlfriend's age, and you put those 2 ages together and divide by half, that was her age. So she was playing out a mom role and a girlfriend role for me. And I snapped and I went, that's interesting. Yeah. Nothing's missing. And then I end up leaving there and going out, and I slept behind the Golden Bear on Pacific Coast Highway. And B.B. King was performing at this place, and he came out at night and became like a father figure. And this lady was a old waitress that came in that club, came out, and now I had my parents there, the same age as my parents, kind of taking care of me out while I was sleeping on this pallet. And then the girls on the beach were the people. And my girlfriend is now young again because my parents are old again. And I started watching as I hitchhiked down to Mexico and I lived on my own. I watched a remorphing of my family and parents and siblings and friends constantly changing form. A master lives in a world of transformation. The masses live in the illusions of gain and loss. They get attached, as the Buddha said, to infatuations, resentments, and they don't honor the transformation. They don't have resilience and adaptability. So I learned at 14, and then I applied it later on the grief process, that the moment you lose these traits, you think, and if you ask the question, who emerged the moment this person died, who emerged to play on those roles? And they're surprised. And I just did it yesterday to about 100 people, 110 people. And I had them go and find it, and they all found out the quantity of those behaviors that this person had that they admired was disseminated between one or many people, one male or female. And when they found out the form it's in, they go, I'm not missing it. And then I go in there and I ask, now what was the downside when they displayed the trait that you admired? To find the unconscious side, because when you're infatuated with somebody, you're blind to the downsides. When you're resentful, you're blind to the upsides. So when they're infatuated with them and they're missing the trait and they're grieving the loss of it, and I show them the new form that it's coming in, and then I show them the downside of the form to break the infatuation and bring it into equilibrium, and then I show the benefits of these newly emerging people and the benefits of their form, which is in line with their values, they immediately go, I'm not grieving. Because the grief is an option, because it's your choice to hold on to your infatuation and then compare it to things that you think are missing when it's not. So I've taken 5,000 people who have lost deaths, children and pets and parents and grandparents, husbands, whatever. I've taken them through that and dissolved that in grief, and it doesn't take more than 3 hours max. And people go, what? And I remember I was doing this. I had got the opportunity to do this at Christ Church after the earthquake, and we came in there into their city hall or whatever, and we cleared a whole bunch of grief. We did it in Ishimaki in Japan after the tsunami there. We brought in our team in there. We did it in the Japanese earthquake in 2016 and brought our team in there. And then I ended up doing a pilot study at Keio University. They were going, what's going on? This has never seen this anything. And we did a pilot study, and they followed these people, prolonged grief syndrome, 6 months to 6 years of grief. We went in there, 2 hours and 17-minute averages. We took them, they followed them for a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, no grief. So grief is the addiction to the fantasy that we create and the perception of loss because we don't know how to ask the right questions. All emotions are because of missing information. All entropy is missing information. All problems and challenges are missing information. Once we know how to ask the right question, the quality of our life is based on the quality of the questions we ask. Once we ask the right questions to see the information, it dissolves. So I am absolutely certain I can transform the grief. And I've been confronted on television, and newspapers, magazines. I haven't failed yet.
Wow. So the death of your child is not necessarily a bad thing.
It doesn't have to be.
Right.
We can choose to make it something.
Or we can crave this addiction of grief.
We can create the addiction of grief, or we can honor them,
Yeah.
because nobody knows when somebody's going to die or how they're going to die. Nobody knows. Now the question is, do you want to be a victim of your history, or do you want to be a master of your destiny? If you can do it. I had a lady that was raped in South Africa, 19-year-old girl, was grabbed, taken, raped, and killed. The parents are grieving. And they come to the Westin Arabella Hotel there in Cape Town on the waterfront area. I do the process, we clear this. They're sitting there dumbfounded that the grief is gone. They got inspired as a cause to open up a rape educational center in the place where it occurred. So right where it occurred, where her body was found, they built a center. They ended up creating massive amount of money coming in from corporations to support the idea in a township. And they built this place, and they, in her name, went on and left a legacy. Now, what's interesting is they were having grief over the loss of what this happened, but when I got down and talked to the mother and father, we found another side. We found that the daughter was doing drugs. She was hanging out with some really wild, crazy things. She was dealing with drugs. The parents were frightened about that happening in their house and getting put in jail. They were ready to sometimes choke her because she was out of control no matter what they were doing. So the grief was only half the equation. There's another part of it that's relieved of not having to deal with that. And they were feeling ashamed, and she was shaming the family and all that stuff. So this grief is sort of one side, but there's another part on this side. So when all of a sudden the daughter now has got millions of dollars donated in her name and the family's name, and now they're proud. They're actually sitting going, thankful that this transformation is occurring, because they're not now having to deal with all the crazies. And now the same girl that they thought was causing them such grief in the sense of what she was doing is actually now doing something that's making a difference in the country, and got funding and all kinds of stuff and notoriety and stuff. So when they looked at that, they realized, no, it's on the way.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, He's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. I'm looking for partners, collaborators, colleagues who want to join forces with me around the globe and create real value, generational wealth, and financial freedom for everyone else around the world. Get involved in the cryptocurrency markets, get involved in the NFT markets. This is your moment. Life all comes down to a few moments. Don't let this pass. Now it's not too late. Next year is going to be too late. Ultimately, this is about freedom. That's the way I see it. This is about giving power back to the people and enabling billions of people worldwide to use the financial markets to improve their lives and those of their friends and their families and their communities. Honestly, I think it's a violation of human rights not to allow people basic access to financial services. Because right now people are being kept in the dark, they're being robbed of education, and it's a travesty. And so I'm looking for people that want to join me and be a part of this solution. And that all happens inside the DeFi Academy. The gains my students are making are absolutely amazing. Double, triple digit gains in the first month alone. That's amazing. This will change your life. Now is the time to get involved. I'm going to tell you exactly how my students in my academy made money in the last 30 days. I'm talking about real trading results. And let me just whet your appetite a little bit. Let me hit you with some numbers. I'm talking Brendan from New Zealand is up 68.77% on the month. Steve from Europe up 83%. Albert in Singapore up 169.9% on one single trade. I got Susan up 153% on her call options alone. Also rocking 139% returns and 442% returns as well on individual trades. These are people that are changing their financial future in the last 30 days, but it's based on trading discipline. I've graduated over 500 students from inside my academy from over 54 countries around the world. It's amazing. When it comes to crypto, DeFi, and blockchain, we love this space. We truly believe it's the future. This is down to our core. It's authentic to what we're doing, and everybody can tell through the camera because you can't make this stuff up. If you're watching me now, wherever you are, I implore you, take 60 seconds right now and join my academy. Apply today. Now you've got a chance. Life all comes down to a few moments. What are you going to do? What's the choice that you're going to make?